and gentlemen, Sentinel 5 is launched. An amazing blast off on top of the Rockot launch vehicle. Peter Freeborn, Eurockot CEO, still obviously here with me on stage. Peter, now the Rockot is in its ascent phase. How far will it go?
Well, it will eventually follow a trajectory around the Earth. What we will see next is the separation of the first stage, which should take place in about a minute's time. This will be followed after another minute by the jettisoning of the payload fairings. This will happen over the northern Atlantic, and 300 seconds after the liftoff, we will have the separation of the upper stage and the second stage. That means that then the upper stage plus satellite will continue their trajectory around the Earth, and that means crossing Canada, crossing the Pacific, and flying over the South Pole, going upwards again, crossing Madagascar, and that's where the separation of the satellite will take place in roughly 1 hour and 20 minutes' time.
And we say all this roughly because we don't actually have any telemetry until we get the acquisition of the first signal.
We will have telemetry until shortly after the separation of the upper stage from the second stage. And this will catch on again about 12 minutes after the separation of the satellite.
If we go back to that other image, of course, when we saw the liftoff, the smoke left behind was yellow. Why is that?
That comes from the oxidizer tanks, and when the oxidizer hits the air, ambient air, it goes orange. It's just a chemical reaction.
Well, we're seeing here now the fairings coming away, as there's a great animation of how it's going to take its course around the Earth. And why is it launched towards the east?
Well, we actually launched towards the west. Okay. We launched towards the west.
Okay.
We're going that way, not that way.
It's the animation.
Exactly. And this is because we are flying a sun-synchronous orbit. So we need to go out to the west from Plesetsk.
All right. And
not to worry, though.
And what happens to all of the pieces that come off and are extinct then?
Well, the first stage drops after separation at an altitude of about 68 kilometers, drops into the Atlantic, smashes into the water. The same goes for the payload fairing half shells. They are released at an altitude of 124 kilometers, also in the North Atlantic. And the second stage, after separation from the first stage, drops into non-territorial waters in Baffin Bay.
Okay. And what we're seeing here is obviously where we're going to be getting more of the telemetry. Can you talk us through this graph that we see on the left?
Well, looking at my watch, the half shells should have been jettisoned. This means that the first and the second stage and the upper stage are on their way now towards Canada.
And how does it know exactly in which direction to fly? Is it just the sheer force
there's
that
a
keeps
flight
it going?
system, like an autopilot in an aircraft. There's a flight system which has been programmed. So, it's done automatically by means of the flight program.
I've just had word that the second stage is separating right now, so that means it's on course.
Right, exactly.
And of course, we talked a little bit more about how after 8 minutes we do lose this telemetry. And when will that come back to us? Is it when we get the acquisition of the first signal?
This will be 12 minutes after the separation of the satellite from the upper stage.
All right.
So we will be without telemetry during the Breezes flight across the Pacific until it traverses Madagascar and releases the satellite.
Is there anything more that you'd like to tell us about this Earth orbit?
Well, probably a few more words about our company and the missile. This is actually, now, today's Friday the 13th.
We know we've had several mishaps.
What is more, this actually is our 13th flight. Sentinel 5P is our 13th launch. I see it as a good sign.
Yes.
Our last launch was Sentinel 3A in February last year, so we have already supported the Copernicus program with one successful launch last year. The previous launches for ESA were launches with Earth Explorer satellites, not Copernicus. Copernicus for us only started early last year.
Well, that's fantastic. We look forward to this mission being a success. And I think that means that we're going to take a small break because we have 75 minutes now before we come back and we get some more signals from the satellite. So our live program here at ESA's Technology Center, ESTAC, in the Netherlands